So, welcome back to the Crafternoon Podcast. My name is Meg,
I'm Daisy.
and today we are delighted to be joined by the lovely Katie Moody, who is an artist and illustrator based here in the UK. She has just published her new book, Sketchbook Joy, which we're really excited to chat to her about. Katie, thank you so much for being here.
Of course, it's so fun to be on like my first podcast and to be able to chat with you guys.
Oh, we're honoured that you've chosen us as your first podcast. So, to kick us off, for anybody who hasn't maybe come across your work before, how would you describe what you do and the art that you like to make?
Okay, so I am primarily, I would say I'm a mixed media sketchbook artist. Lucky enough to be able to do this full time, and I share a lot of my work online. So obviously I've got Instagram, I've got YouTube, and then I have a Patreon community, which is a bit more like close knit, and like I share tutorials there. And most of my art, it's inspired by nature. I do use a lot of colour, and I'm very much about loosening up and not being perfectionistic about it, because I think that's what a lot of people, like, it holds them back, is having these like self-limiting beliefs, and I'm very much about trying to break that down and really to inspire people to just give it a go, because I think that's what art is all about. It's about the process and not the end result. And so that's mostly what I try and do when I share online, is to just encourage people to try it out themselves.
So, how did you get into being a full-time artist? Because I think you worked in graphic design, was it?
Yes, so I was a graphic designer for about 10 years, and then very burnt out, very much in the grind of working in a studio and not enjoying it at all. And so for my mental health, I decided to try out freelance life. And I did start doing design work, going freelance. And then I started my Patreon, and I've always had like an Etsy shop. Like it's always been, I've been illustrating on the side. So when I was doing my 9 to 5, I would do illustrating like 5 to 9. And so it's always been something I've been passionate about. And I was always my dream to be able to do it full time. And I transitioned to doing my Etsy and also the freelance work, and then slowly sort of tapering that off and working more on my Patreon, which has grown since then. So that's sort of been like a gradual thing. So nothing's happened like really, really quickly. It's all sort of happened quite gradually. And I think like the main catalyst for that was my daily drawing challenge, which I did for that first year when I went freelance. So I was sharing on Instagram every day, and that really allowed my audience to grow, and that in turn grew my Patreon, which has allowed me to be full-time now.
That's incredible. We were talking about your Patreon wall that you have beforehand. We were like, oh yeah, wall, because you obviously, every time you have a new Patreon join, you create a little piece of art for them.
Yeah.
Is that something that you set out to, like, did you allocate a wall, or did you have to find a wall?
So when I first started the Patreon, it wasn't a thing, because I was just writing people's names on their post-its. And then as I got more and more, I was running out of room on my wall. And then I changed studio because we converted the place I'm in now, which was the garage. And then I'll just... can we see it? There it is.
Oh, wow.
And so like
it looks
all
so
of
cool.
these are people. And yeah, I put this big, I don't know, I guess it's like A2 sized mural that I painted, and then I just make everyone like either like an animal or something to do with nature, because there's so many of those, and like with my audience growing, I knew I needed a topic that had quite a lot because they are all unique. And yeah, so it just, for me, it helps me to visualize my community, and so every time someone joins, I can do them a little icon and just say thank you. So I share them on my stories, and then they go up on the wall, and I can take them off and add them on when they leave and come back. And yeah, it just helps me to like see that, and it, like, rather than just names on the screen, it actually feels like we're more of a community because of that. But it wasn't something I set out to do, because obviously when it joined, it was post-its, and then I had to turn all of those post-its into icons, and then slowly it's just when people come in. But it's definitely getting a little bit full and a little bit hard to juggle at the moment.
Are you thinking of doing like a part 2 if it does get to that point?
I don't know what I'll do. I haven't thought that far ahead. I never thought it would get this big, so I haven't thought
You'll have to do like
Yeah.
a different like scenery, like maybe at the beach or something.
Yeah, or maybe I'll
Yeah.
just like, instead of on paper, I'll just do a big mural on the wall and just stick them on the
Would be
wall.
cool.
Yeah.
That'd be really, really cool.
So tell us a little bit about your sketchbook practice then. What does your kind of routine look like day to day? Because I know you primarily share your art within your sketchbook.
Yes. So I basically do all my work in sketchbooks. There are some that I do original paintings outside of it, which is part of a Patreon reward. But generally, I just feel the safest in my sketchbooks. And I don't work in one all of the time. I have so many on the go, which is kind of like journals, I think.
Yeah.
And like obviously it depends on my mood because they all have different paper stock, they have different size, and so that's how I kind of work out which one I'm going to work in today. I don't separate my sketchbooks by like subject or anything. It's generally by what I feel like and what medium I'll be using. And then yeah, I basically just like idea wise, it's just something that maybe I've taken a photo that I want to draw, or like I don't actively like look for inspiration now, because generally I have like so many photos in my camera roll I can draw from, and there'll be like ideas from when I'm just scrolling Instagram that will just come up. And I don't, I think a lot of people think I draw every day, and I don't, because I just find like with my business stuff, I'm just so busy, I have to do all the editing and stuff. And as much as I'd love to draw every day, I don't make the time for that. So I would say it's probably maybe 3 or 4 times a week. And I do like to work really fast. So I don't allocate any more than like an hour if I've got a long time. But generally it's maybe 20 to 30 minutes in my sketchbook on those days. And sometimes I will be recording them for Patreon or for YouTube. At the moment I'm on a mission to like find my personal creativity, so to create without the business in mind, because I think that's really important, of it not just being for work, because it's still my hobby. It's just the really blurred line now that I get to do what I love for my job versus being able to create just for me. So that's like a personal challenge at the moment. But yeah, I just like fill out my sketchbooks. I have so many art supplies. Like because I'm a mixed media artist, it does mean that I don't just have like, I'm not just focused on watercolour. It also means I like gouache and acrylic markers and blah, 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 which was why my studio is like full to bursting with stuff, which isn't great because there's always something else I can buy. But I find the joy comes from combining these things. A lot of my inspiration comes from trying like gouache with neocolours and trying this with this and changing the order and really feeling quite playful with my work and just really leaning into those experiments and seeing what can happen rather than thinking about, I want to create a perfect piece of work in my sketchbook. It's more about, oh, what if I try this and then this and see what happens.
You mentioned having a lot of art supplies. One of my main questions when we were talking about questions was, is there anything you haven't tried yet? Like, is there a supply, a medium that you haven't dipped your toes into yet?
There is. So before this year was watercolour, which I've dived in. Like that is a new obsession. But the one thing that I am like limiting myself to that I will not try is oils. And so like that's like the only one, but that's one where I'm like, no, can't go there. I'm too impatient for oils. I won't wait, like because I work quite fast, I don't have the patience to wait for it to dry. I don't want to have to worry about like the solvents. And then when I say that, people are like, oh, you can get water-based oils. I'm like, no, I've just got to say no. I can't lay in another medium. So that's the one thing that I'm like, I'll draw the line at oils.
That's fair. That's fair.
Everything else is fair game though.
I love that. You were like, don't give me like a reason that I can try these. I've tried to say no and I've tried to be well behaved.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm also like really aware of like the consumerism of it, especially as a mixed media artist, because there's no stopping you. With mixed media, you can combine so many different things. And I do think sometimes it would be easier if I just stuck to watercolour or I just stuck to gouache. But that's not where my joy comes from. My joy comes from trying all these different things and pairing them together. But I'm also very hyper aware that not everybody can access these things, and you know it's expensive. Art supplies aren't cheap. So I'm also like very aware when I'm sharing that it's stuff that I love and that I want to be able to share with, to make sure that, you know, I don't want to waste people's money. I know that I have influence in what people buy, so I'm really like hyper aware of that. Because I don't want people to just, like, art supplies are bought and to be used, not to just sit in a cart, you know? And like, there are things that happen in cycles for me. So sometimes I'll be on an acrylic ink hype, and then that will sit like untouched for a few months because I've moved on to something else, but I'll always cycle back round. So I think if you're not using it, then like you pass it on. And I'm also a big lover of like secondhand art supplies and buying that way, and also not buying multi-sets and just buying one or two or something to see if you like it first. So like different ideas for people to try mixed media without breaking the bank. I know that wasn't your question, but I just...
No, that was...
all good.
Okay, cool.
No, I think that's really important, especially with mixed media, because like you said, there are so many different supplies you can try. Have you always been into mixing materials, or is there like one specific one that you started off with?
So I did start off with gouache, which is still like my ride or die medium. I think it's just my comfort zone. But I could never just use gouache. I always had to add pencils on, because I really wanted to define more details with pencils. And so like just having the two still is mixed media, it's just gouache and pencils. Then I started adding on Neocolors, and then generally those are like the three. I'll always have a wet medium, so a paint generally, and then like pencils or Neocolors on top. And that's usually, it's like the first layer that changes if I change it to acrylic or markers or something like that. And that helps me to sort of have a formula of working out mixed media in my head, because I generally will always finish with pencils and Neocolors. Not always, like it's not a set thing. As I said, I do like to play around with things, and like sometimes I'll do line first instead of shape first and swap the order. But I would say gouache is the one that was my first starting point, and then I started just trying some other stuff, and then now I'm in watercolor, and yeah, it spiraled from there.
So going back to the sketchbooks, I know you said you use different ones, so it's probably a difficult question if I ask you which is your favorite. But with using so many different materials, like how do you find that? Because obviously some are like wet media, some are not. Like, do you have that like sort of challenge of what paper is going to be best for like all of the art supplies that you're throwing at it? Because I'm assuming you don't
Yes,
want to like limit like, okay, I'm working in this sketchbook, but this sketchbook doesn't actually like this material, but I really want to
exactly.
use it. So it must be a
Yeah,
bit of a back and forth between those.
yeah, exactly. And I don't think there is a perfect sketchbook for me. I don't think there will be one that will handle all of the different mediums that I use. And like I have definitely got my favorites. I've got one, but then again, it doesn't encompass every single medium. But like my favorites are the Royal Talens art creation sketchbook, because they are so affordable. And like sometimes with really expensive sketchbooks, I get scared to work in them, and like it's almost as if you think you have to create perfect art because you spent so much money on this sketchbook. You don't want to waste paper, and that's not really what art is about, which is why I like the Royal Talens, because they're really affordable. However, they don't take watercolour very well. So then I moved on to the other sketchbooks, and the other one that I always recommend is the Strathmore 500 series mixed media sketchbook, because that will handle basically everything, but it doesn't have as smooth paper as the Royal Talens does, and it's also not as affordable. So there are definitely ones that I'll constantly buy new ones. This is another thing that I keep buying, is just trying out loads of different sketchbooks to see what works. And like my to fill sketchbook stack is embarrassingly large.
We've spoken about this before with other people, and it's like we all have a notebook hoard of some kind, so it's all fine.
And it's like in my head, it's like I'll get round to them, but then I buy another one, and then it goes on the pile. But like it's helpful to look through, to look at the different formats. Sometimes I'll want one that's like this big and it's really small. So like travel sketchbooks, I'll go smaller because maybe it feels more manageable to fill when I'm away. But yeah, there are just so many, and I do think it depends on the artist. Like for me, I prefer I don't like cold pressed paper, which is the bumpy one, just because then I can't put my details on top because it doesn't create that smooth line. But that's personal preference. So like what might be my favourite might not be someone else's. But generally I try and pick, my favourite sketchbooks are ones that do handle quite a few mediums. It's just some I find work better with wet mediums and some better with drier or thicker paint.
Have you ever worked on bigger formats outside of sketchbooks? Or is that something you've not ventured?
I have one time. And it was for an exhibition a few years ago that I was picked to be part of, like as a lucky dip. So it was like a group of local artists, and I challenged myself to go big because I was staying in my sketchbook, and I worked on 6 A2 sized pieces, so pretty big, and I documented this on Patreon, and I've got 2 hanging in my dining room actually because they were like big deal for me. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I loved the challenge of painting big because it really changes the way that you create, because I was so used to using smaller brushes, and then even if you take a bigger brush, it creates totally different mark than working smaller in my sketchbook. So it was total like a new experience for me, totally different but very fun. But then, yeah, I just like regressed back into my sketchbook. I'll stay here.
The comfort zone of the sketchbook.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I think I like sketchbooks because I can turn the page. So I did feel a lot of pressure on those, especially knowing that I bought this fancy paper. And again, like I said, with expensive sketchbooks, with expensive paper, it was like, okay, this has to go well. And with sketchbooks, I don't feel that, because if it goes wrong, it doesn't matter. I'll turn the page and I've forgotten about it. So for me, sketchbooks are like my comfort zone, because it really doesn't matter what I create in them, because I'm a big believer of not tearing things out of sketchbooks. Just turn the page, because you might not like it at the time, but in a few weeks' time, you might see the good and be like, oh, actually, that wasn't as bad as I thought. And also because by the end of the sketchbook, you'll be able to see your progression. So if you keep those early works that you hated, you'll be able to see at the end like how far you've come. So I think keeping the stuff that you don't like is really important. And I think it's easier when you're working outside of a sketchbook on paper to just throw that away, whereas it's harder to like actually tear out of a sketchbook. So I think that's also another reason why I love sketchbooks.
I feel like I need to get a sketchbook, because I work on like A4 watercolour, and I'm like, once it's done, it goes in a folder, because most of the time I do it for Patreon, put it in a folder and I don't think about it or look at it until I put another one in there or something. But I feel like you're convincing me that I should
this
maybe.
This is my job. This is like my entire job, and it's working.
You're great at your job.
Yeah, that's good.
So when you start a new sketchbook, are you fearless? Do you just dive straight in, or do you have a bit of a blank page fear? Maybe is there a routine that you do? I don't know, because I feel like I always buy a new sketchbook and then I just sort of like look at it and I go, oh, that's great. I'm a little bit like nervous to work in that now.
Yeah. No, I still feel that. Like, I think that's standard. Like, it's totally normal to feel that fear, because even though you know it is just a sketchbook, you're still like, oh, okay, this is the first page. This is like a big deal. Sometimes I skip that first page and go straight in. I know there's people who just like open the sketchbook wherever and create, but my brain couldn't do that. I have to work like chronologically. But I'm okay skipping that first page and then going in. And there are a few things that I do that really help me to get out of my head, because I am a chronic overthinker in real life, but when I'm in my sketchbook, I can turn that. It's the only thing I found that can turn off my like worries and my overthinking. And so for me, the biggest thing that I like to do is set a timer. So you are given this time like to create in your sketchbook, and you don't have time to overthink. So generally, like, it will be 10 to 20 minutes. Obviously, if you've never done timers before, that like sometimes I do 5 to 10, and I wouldn't recommend going straight in with 5 to 10 if you've not done it before, because I know that's kind of scary.
That's intense.
Yeah. And I don't want to scare you off. So say 20 to 30 minutes, and just just having that timer ticking down, it can be scary at first, but it's also like, oh gosh, okay, I just have to go for it. And so then you don't think so much about the perfect stroke or the perfect little addition to your page, because you don't have time. And then when you've started, you can, like, even if you start with a 15-minute timer and you're really into it, you can just ignore the timer now because you started, and you can carry on however you like. But it's just getting going that is the hardest point, because like once you go, you're away, you know? But it's our brains that seem to stop us from starting. And I find that even now is my brain kind of forgets how good it feels to create, because when I haven't done it for a while, it's like, oh, you know, it's harder to get back into it. And even though I know I feel better when I'm creating or when I finish creating, but my brain forgets that, and it's just like, well, don't bother, you know? But when I'm actually forcing, like, I do have to force my creativity, and I think that as much as I've got all this inspiration and stuff, I still have to make myself sit down to create, because with life there's all these other things to do. There's always washing, there's always pressure, there's always admin. And so you do have to make time to be creative. Even as a full-time artist, I have to force myself to create, to make that time, because otherwise it gets filled with other stuff, which is important but isn't as fun. And I think like making time, even if it is 10, 15 minutes, whenever you have it, is like the biggest factor for creating in your sketchbook. And then things like the timers and having references that you can pull from, and things like Instagram challenges and stuff, like prompt lists to give you ideas for starting, just to help break down those barriers even further to actually create in your sketchbooks.
With your Patreon, do you, because that's obviously like a routine cycle, monthly thing,
Yeah.
do you find that there's more pressures with doing art for that than there is other types of like content that you're putting out? Because that's obviously something that's just a constant push out almost.
Yeah. I think there used to be, especially when I first started Patreon, but now I've been doing it for almost 4 years. It's less of that pressure, because at first it was always like, oh, I don't know if people want this. And I've kind of got to a point now in my business where I kind of know what people want, or like I'll get requests, and that also really helps. But certainly when I'm doing like my tutorials, so when they're real time, I definitely do get, beforehand I get quite nervous before like filming it, because I'm like, oh, this is going to be a tutorial, people are going to be following this, I have to make sure I do the right steps. But then again, when I'm in it and doing it, I just forget about all that. I turn off that overthinking, and I can just create and not worry. So again, it's like the starting point that is the blocker for me, and I overthink, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is right. But when I'm creating and I've done it, I'm like, oh, that turned out nice, luckily.
You've been sketching out and about and even abroad on retreats. What has that been like?
That has been so rewarding. So I'm currently doing the Artist's Way, which is pushing me to do more. Like, I'm doing it to push my confidence and my creativity outside of my little circle. And the one thing that I found, I'm a massive introvert, and I didn't really think I was like a people person. I've kind of fallen into this role of a teacher. I didn't set out to become a teacher, but that's kind of what I've become on Patreon, and like a mentor and an encourager. And so when I started doing, like when I did this retreat and I taught like in person, it was incredibly rewarding. And I've started to realize, especially with like online communities and also creating out and about, how important that connection is. And as someone who is an introvert, it was kind of a surprise to be like, oh wow, I really get a lot back from this. And it's like a two-way street. That I find it really rewarding, and so lovely to see when people get it, you know, like you can see when something clicks, or you can see when they're having a problem, and you can say, oh, maybe try this, and then they're like, oh, okay, and it just kind of unlocks something in their brain. And like even when I'm going out and about just by myself, that's pushing me creatively to not stay at home all the time, which is very easy to do, but create outside, which again brings more challenges, and not necessarily bad challenges, just challenges in that you have to work with the weather, or you have to work with the changing light, or the thing in front of you is completely gone because it moved, and so you have to work from memory. So lots of different challenges in a good way that sometimes also encourages people to come up and speak to you, which as an introvert is a terrifying thing. But I'm really getting past that now. I can see my confidence growing massively because I am pushing these things and like going outside and drawing with other artists, and then doing these retreats, and like I'm hosting my first UK workshop in September, and just I feel like it's the right path for me. And it wasn't a path I don't think I ever thought I would be on. I didn't think I would be a teacher hosting a group of people and telling them what to do. And so it's kind of a surprise to me that I fall into it and I feel so good doing it, and feeling like this is what I was supposed to be. It's very it's just very, very nice and like rewarding, and it just feels like I'm on the right path finally. Because like when I was a graphic designer and always thinking I would like to be freelance one day and be a full-time artist, I didn't think I'd get there, or it felt like such a challenge. And then there was lots of different avenues that I explored, like I did try doing freelance design and doing lots of different things, and now I feel like I found my thing, which is really nice to feel. And it definitely feels like I'm on the right path with teaching people, and actually not necessarily I think with teaching I thought it would be like, you must do this and this and this. Whereas the way I teach is, try this, let's start here and see where we go, and I'll encourage you along the way. Because I don't, like a lot of my tutorials and things, and like same in my book, which we can get onto, is like, you can start here, but feel free to go off on your own course. Whereas I think, like, especially in like university, I did graphic design, but I know with some teachings, it's you have to do it this way or you're doing it wrong. And it's like on YouTube, I know you get these comments where it's like, well, why did you do it like that? That's not the right way to do it. It's like, well, there is no right or wrong way, you know? And I think it's the same with teaching, is that I'm leaning into my teacher role of being an encourager more than a set way of doing it. And I think understanding that has made such a difference, and just seeing it as, let's start here and encourage your creativity to find your own style and the way you want to do it. Like, you can copy me, but also try push past that. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think that's what like a lot of people, I feel like if they haven't like kept with like art and stuff because they've had like a discouraging art teacher at school,
Yeah.
like you always hear about that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you've not done that right, you've done that wrong, and I feel like that really knocks people. So that
For sure,
approach, I
yeah.
feel like, is something that people really value, I think, even a lot more than, because it's quite easy like with the internet and things these days to
Yeah.
find out like how to do a specific thing if you just wanted like the
Yeah.
basic tutorial.
Yeah.
But that like encouragement behind it, I think, almost has more value for people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And that's what I hear back from my Patreon as well, from my patrons, is that it's just the environment and the community and the fostering that playfulness that's more important than necessarily the tutorials. It gives them that starting point, but I'm also encouraging them to go off. And I think that's what art is about, is finding your own way of finding things. But like you said, there is like tutorials and things for set ways to start, but I'm also about pushing past that and like changing the materials and seeing what works for you, and changing the order and the supplies and things like that for them to really find their joy in their sketchbooks.
So with your book then, Katie, what was that process like? Had you always wanted to write a book, or was it much like the teaching where you kind of just fell into, I'm writing a
Yeah.
book now?
Yeah, it was kind of fell into it. I kind of, I didn't ever think I'd be writing a book, and I was approached by a publisher to do that. So I didn't like have a proposal or anything. It was more just because I built up my audience and they found me, and they broached the subject, and that's when I was like, I have a lot that I could say actually. So yeah, I would love to write a book with you. And then they asked what I would write it, and then I made my proposal that way. So it still had to, go to them with their sales and their marketing department to be like, yeah, okay, you can write this book. But before that point, it wasn't something that I ever thought that I would be doing. And like you said, it has evolved as I've, found confidence and been teaching online, that I felt like, okay, I can teach in a book. And for me, the writing process was very easy. I'm very much a typer. I've always enjoyed like English and writing, so the writing came very easily. And then it was a case of trying to fit into the word count, because I could just have written and written and written. And so like trying to make it succinct enough to get my points across, because it's very much about sketchbooks in general and like mixed media, and like there are so like I could have written a book per chapter, like the amount of stuff that I could say about it, because it's such a broad topic. But I also wanted it to be able to be approachable for beginners, and not scare them off because there's all this stuff that I need. So trying to find that balance of you can start with what you have, you don't need all these fancy supplies, and trying to get that it's quite a conversational tone, and again really leaning into that encouraging tone of giving it a go. And then I'm looking at it because it's right here.
Hold it up, show.
There it is. And it's like quite thick. Like when you're writing it in a document, you don't realise. And then when I got the copy, I was like, that's a lot of work. Like, that's clear.
This is doorstop weight.
Yeah. But there's stuff on here about like the different mediums. So like a couple of pages on each. And then things like finding inspiration, different prompts and drawing challenges. And then there's a section on colour, colour palette, and then how to combine the mediums that I talked about as well, and hints and tips. And then there's a whole section at the back for like projects, which is like step by steps. And again, this is like from lots of different nature things, so landscapes and animals, and trying to show different styles as well and different approaches. So like there's one where I'll start with line work, and there's another where we'll start with blocks of colour. So kind of just showing people options and showing them that it's not a right way or wrong way to do it. As you said, I think people can be put off by past teachers or past things that have, made them feel like they can't create art. And I strongly believe that everyone can create. It's just letting yourself do it. I don't believe that it's talent. I think it's just practice. And I know that some people are just like, no, I'm not an artist, I can't draw. It's like, well, I couldn't draw when I was, younger, and it's just something I've really honed in on, and now I can draw for a living. But I couldn't do that before. It's just because I've put in a lot of time to get to this point. Not that you need to put in that much time as I have to get to this point, but it's definitely something that I think anyone can do. I think we just have a lot of self-limiting beliefs that tell us I'm not creative, and everyone can be creative. I really believe that, whether it is journaling or art or creating something. But it's about the process and not the end result. So even if you might not create a masterpiece, not many people do, I certainly never do, but it's not about that, it's about the process. It's about let's just have fun in our sketchbooks and see what happens, and encouraging that way of thinking in the book, rather than, okay, we're going to create 100 pieces of like perfect work, because I don't think that exists, and it creates this really high like point for you to reach for, which is impossible, and then you'll feel dejected that you're not going to get there. And so by focusing on the joy and the process, I think is a way more manageable and better way to create, and so that's what I try to encourage in the book. And then at the very end there's a whole chapter about like where to go next, because as I said, my book is like a starting point. You can do all these different projects, and hopefully it will spark more creative ideas. You'll do something and be like, oh, I wonder what would happen if I add a person in, or I wonder what would happen if I tried this material. And so it's more about encouraging further work rather than, okay, tick, read that book, put it on the shelf, I kind of want it to be a catalyst for creativity, for them to then create their own work.
So it's quite a good one that people can put on the shelf, take it off the shelf, put it back,
Yes.
take it off,
Yeah,
and just kind of like
exactly.
go with it rather
Yeah.
than just read and be done with it.
Yeah,
Which
rather
is-
than just okay, I must read this every night, blah blah blah. I want it to be a pick up and put down book, because you're like, oh, I really need to grab my sketchbook now.
I feel like when you were saying about like everyone can be creative and stuff, I feel like a lot of the things people have hurdles with is the patience, like being patient with yourself and not having that like frustration feeling, or if you do get frustrated, not dwelling on it. I feel like that's the bit that people get stuck on and then go, I can't do it, rather than going, hang on a minute, it is a skill that can be tuned, and it's something that you have to work on, to build on, to get to where you want to be with it. But it doesn't mean it has to be like hard work all the way. You can enjoy it as you go.
Exactly.
rather
And like
than-
it won't, it's not easy all the time. Like, I'd be lying if I didn't say that there'll be days where I feel like I'm a terrible artist. It's like, I'm a fraud, what am I doing? I can't draw.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, massive,
Yeah.
massive. And the next day I'll wake up with a fresh mind, and I'll create. I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad, you know. And I think it depends on your mood, and it depends on how you're feeling, and like what's going on with you as well. But it is a case of, it won't always be easy, but you have to push through, and not necessarily just pushing through in terms of your sketchbook practice, but also per page, because there's always an ugly phase. And one of like my mantras on our Patreon is like, keep going, like pushing through that messy like ugly phase, and the more you add, the more it does like fine tune. But it's so easy, and I was guilty of this when I first started doing my daily sketchbooking, of just turning the page or just be like, nah, let's not finish that. But it's amazing how much it changes the more you add. So a lot of my work always looks terrible, and so that's when I'm like, in my tutorials, I'm like, don't worry guys, this will turn out. Like, yeah. Because it's like, especially like on my live drawing calls where I'm creating something, and it looks like a hot mess, but our mantra is trust the process. And so it's like, okay, let's just keep going, and by the end of it, it's amazing. And I think because we're creating together, it helps us like to continue to keep going. Again, coming back to community and that aspect of like trying things out, and even if it doesn't work out, at least you tried it. And I think that's why I'm such a lover of like sharing work, even if you hate it. So like on Instagram, when I was doing my daily art challenge, so many pieces I really disliked, but I didn't have a time to redo it, because at that point I was creating every day for this 365 challenge, and it helped me see good things. So I'd upload it anyway. It's like, okay, well, here you go, this is what I created today. And then there would be people saying, oh, I love that colour combo, or oh, I really like this area. And then I'd be like, oh, okay, it's not as bad as I thought. And so again, with that community and the sharing, it really helps you to see the good, because as you said, we are really mean to ourselves, and like we'll create work that we think is rubbish. But if we like give ourselves space, or if we share it online, I think like the art community, and same with the journaling community, that people are really nice. And so people will, you know, say nice things and help you see things differently. And I think that's such a valued perspective to get on your art. And like, even if you don't share, because I know that's really scary, just giving yourself time and space, because sometimes I'll create something, come back the next day and see it in a better light, just because I find that often when you're creating, you have something in your head, and then when you're creating it, it doesn't turn out like it's in your head at all, and so you think it's rubbish. But the next day, you've forgotten what was in your head, and you can see it just for what's on the paper. And so it helps you see it just for that, and you like it more because you've forgotten what you were aiming for. And I think that's really, really important. And so now I tend to not have anything in my head and just go for it, because then I'm not trying to be perfectionistic about creating what's in my head on the paper. I just go in. But that is definitely a skill of like working your way up to not have anything in your head and just trusting the process, which has come from years and years of hoping for the best and seeing what happens. But yeah, I do think like after some time, like, and a lot of practice, we can be kinder to ourselves, and you do see your skills grow really, really fast as you create.
With the daily challenges, like it forcing you to just put something out, because it's
Yeah.
you're going to have something if you've put like 365 things out, even if it's just an idea.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
exactly.
like, alongside that, the expectation, like, you're taking away the expectation part with, especially with the daily. You're just, it's got to get out, something's got to go out, so let's take the expectation away and just play and do.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I attribute that daily challenge to be like the catalyst to my creating today, because I did have to make time every day, and I know that's really difficult, but there were times where it was just a 5-minute sketch, and just that persistence and like doing it all the time and working on my different sketchbooks. That's how I found my style, is just doing things, seeing what worked, seeing what I didn't like. But you have to create the bad art to get to the good art. And so that was really, really, really important for me to get to that point. And so I did it. I did another 100-day challenge. After that one, I haven't committed to another year long. I don't have time. But I did do another 101. And then on the lead up to the book, I did a 30-day art challenge, which was hosted as a challenge on Instagram, which was also really nice. And I think that really helped a lot of people. I've had some like really nice messages where it helped them to get past that hurdle, because it did force them to create every day and try different things. And yeah, it is a lot of work, but for me, that was definitely my catalyst to finding my style.
Yeah, and I think like because I've done the junk journal challenges, which is obviously a little bit different, but I found that like having prompts that like you wouldn't necessarily be drawn to, and like forcing yourself to do them, because like I feel like almost when there's that resistance, that's kind of where you actually get to the good stuff, and you kind of you'll find something to get out of it.
Yeah, for sure, because it's like similar to like with having the prompts. When I did my year-long, it was just whatever I felt like. But for the 30-day one, I did have set prompts, and there were things in there that were scary to me, like draw a person, which is out of my comfort zone. But it's amazing how much you learn from that, because it teaches you other skills, or you'll try something different. And like, it's amazing how much pushing out of your comfort zone can make such a difference, even if it's just a tiny little thing. So it's like really important to be able to try these challenges, because there's no risk, like same with like your junk journaling challenge. If you tried something and it didn't work out, it doesn't matter, it doesn't hurt anyone, it's not a life or death like hobby, which is great. So like you can try something, and if it doesn't work out, again, just turn the page or cover it up, like grab a piece of collage and stick over it if you hate it that much, or just try and paint over it and just add more layers. So it is just paper at the end of the day, and just like playing around and just learning from it and seeing what process works for you.
Yeah, and it's always funny because like I feel like whenever I've done a page and I think, okay, I really don't like this, but I will push myself to share it because I've said I will share it, I'm being honest. And then it's like it'll end up being like the most popular page or like people's favorites. And I'm just like, wow, really? Really? Like I did this amazing piece and nobody really cared, and I really liked it. And then this hot mess that I'm presenting you with, suddenly you're going like crazy for it. It's so
I
funny.
find the same, because I have a joke with my husband that if I hate something, that's the one that will do really, really well. And so it's like, oh, I really don't know this, and he's like, well, share it, and it will always be that one that does super well. I don't know how it works like that, but it seems to always be that's the one that will resonate and get the most likes and stuff. And I'm like, it's I did a peony piece, and like even the pink floral that I know you have as a print, Meg.
I've got that on my wall,
Yeah, I wasn't going to share it.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's one of my favourite pieces on my gallery wall in my studio.
Oh. But yeah, I didn't like it at the time, and so I shared it anyway, and then it got so much response from people wanting it to be a print that it became a print. But yeah, it almost didn't make it out of my sketchbook. It's wild.
I suppose you also illustrated the whole of the book as well as written it.
Yes.
So I'm sure there was ones in there that potentially you were like, should I put this into print?
Yeah, because like there was like obviously a lot of projects that I did, and then I was like, that's not good enough, let's do another project, or we'll try that again. But there was also a deadline, so which was helpful, because otherwise I would have just kept going and going. Of like, okay, well, this one isn't quite as good as this one, and there has to be like that stop off point where you need to, you know, that like with the book, I had like the biggest imposter syndrome and massive overthinking, and there was a point where I just kept like redoing stuff, and so it did help having the deadlines, because it forced me to be like, okay, you need to stop. I was really getting into that perfectionistic mindset again, which is what my sketchbook book stuff is removing, but the book really brought that back for me. And so it was a real personal challenge to take what I was writing about and apply it to this project, and really practicing what I preach, because there was so many things where it wasn't good enough, and then there are some projects where I'm like, oh, it's not my favorite. And there's some things, so like there's a lot of like drawings just to fill it out, so like everything in here is like my work, and there's a couple of photos and things of like me drawing, but there are definitely things in here where I'm like, it's not my favorite thing, you know. If it's going in a book, it should be, but it can't be like that. And like other people don't know that I wasn't sure about it, and it could be their favorite thing in the book, because we all have different preferences. It's just different to mine.
You were talking before about you want it to be the book that you kind of pull off the shelf, and I have just pulled it off my shelf just to like look at the pictures. So yeah, I probably have looked at ones that you thought, oh, actually, I'm not so keen on that, and I'm there going, how amazing is this?
Yeah, it's funny because like we have all these like internal battles with ourselves when we're creating anything, and people don't see that in the end result. It's like the whole highlight reel on Instagram. As much as we'll share something that maybe we didn't like, they won't know that, and so they'll just see the good points and be like, oh, this is great, which is really nice, and it just goes to show how much we can be in our heads when we're creating. And when you put something out into the world, like you don't see all the background work that went into that necessarily, which can be a good or bad thing. But I think that's why it's so important to create anyway. Mostly it's like a lot of creating for me is also, because it does switch off my brain, it is like therapy. So even if I didn't share it, I'd still be creating. It's just the sharing is an extra aspect where it helps me boost my confidence and like, see things in a different light and inspire people with stuff I share as an extra aspect of that. But I still create it even if I wasn't sharing at the end of the day.
The cover design, how much of an input did you have into that? Because I know there's like the publishing world has like a set, like, you know, marketable type of cover, and I'm just wondering with like between that and then obviously like as an artist I'd be like, oh my goodness, I want it to look like this. And I really love the foiling on the cover as well.
Fun fact is it wasn't supposed to be green. That was a printer mistake. Yeah. It was supposed to be just black, but then they used the wrong foil and then it got green, which is perfect. I love the green, but it wasn't supposed to be green.
There's another example, because I was like, this is so cool. It must have, like, you know, the choice of which foil to use.
That was an accident. But with the cover, I actually designed it myself. I think because I was a graphic designer, I think that helped. So like when they said, do you have any cover ideas, I just mocked it up. And like, this is my handwriting, so I scanned that all in, and then I used this one from the book. They did, there was a couple of options, so that I did have a landscape on here as one of the options, but because this is like going around the world, this one was actually on the cover, but it felt too English, like English countryside. So they put that on the back because they were worried it wouldn't appeal to an American audience. So there was all these different things. And the original concept that they wanted to do was, you know, like with my flat lay photos where you've got like the wooden background, they wanted it like that with half of the sketchbook on this and then wrapping around with the other half of the sketchbook here as a photo with like the blurb in that sketchbook and then a piece of art here. But sadly, it didn't go through their marketing. So we went simple and then I designed this one. But yeah, there was quite a lot to it in terms of picking like which art went on. I knew I wanted something colourful, something naturey, and so this is one of the projects in the book. So I wanted it to be something in the book, on the cover that someone can follow and create. And this was just nice and bright. And I think it's like got enough colour there. It's simple enough that it doesn't like put people off, that they'll say like, ooh, could never create that, you know. I want people to see it and be like, yeah, I'll give it a go. So yeah, that's how the cover came to be.
Really interesting. I'm amazed that the really nice foil wasn't supposed to be there.
It worked out so well, but yeah, it was supposed to be black, which now I look at it like, what terrible
Was it meant
choice,
to have
right?
like anything on the black, or was it just
was
meant to be black?
Yeah, it was supposed to be black foil.
Okay.
Oh no, I don't know actually, because I think sometimes when I was a designer, black as a thing, sometimes if it was a spot colour, was specific for foiling or a special effect. So I wonder if the printer actually thought, oh, well, that's supposed to be foil.
Just
So
use whatever the last foil colour was in there. Just
right.
bunged it on yours.
Like, oh, well, we don't have any black, just use green. But it worked out nicely. But when they sent the pictures, I was like, oh, because it wasn't what I was expecting. And I was like, now I can't picture it any differently. It's like, that was meant to be. That was a nice, like,
Happy mistake.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But I don't know if I'm supposed to share that, but there we go. I did it.
Little podcast exclusive there.
Yeah, exclusive, that I've never shared anywhere.
So outside of your sketchbooks and your art, do you do any other creative hobbies?
So art is like my biggest thing, but I have, as I said, I'm trying to find time for other stuff. So I do quite a lot of baking, and I like to say reading, but I have had my book on my bedside for about 3 months, so it's very slow going. But I do still journal. So obviously I do my morning pages, which is part of the Artist's Way, which is stream of consciousness journaling. And I also do my travel journals still. So that's like my hobby that I do when I just want to switch off from art and business completely, but still creative. So I still do, I'm still working on my Japan journals, which is like never ending because there's so many photos and things to document. And I need to get this done before I go back to Japan next year, because otherwise I'll never finish it. But yeah, so travel journaling in my traveler's notebook, I do that.
Do you ever bring your travel journal with you on, or is it always post the trip that you journal them?
I did take it with me to Japan, and I did 2 pages. Yeah, so, like they're some of my favourite pages, like the very first ones. But like the plan was to do it, but you know when you're on holiday and it's just there's so much going on, and like it is hard to make time for it. And I obviously wanted to make the most of being in Japan, and so you know we were doing so many steps, and it was just really hard to fit it in. So like this one I did whilst there, and like sticking the ephemera and stuff. And then I think I did
map.
one more. Yeah.
We love a
and
map.
like ephemera, yeah. And then the rest of it, yeah, I did. I've been doing it back at home. But I tried. But I've started taking like travel sketchbooks with me. And that's kind of, obviously that is like my painting hobby and work. But I've started like combining journaling in. So when I don't necessarily have time for my journaling, I combine the two. And so that's been a new avenue that I've started exploring the last few years of. It's really difficult because like I have my hobbies which need to be separate, but then I can also combine them, and then does that become work? So again, blurred lines. But I've started like, I just came back from holiday last week, and I took a sketchbook, and like I'd combine like journaling with the art. And also like I've got like ephemera which I'll stick in, but then I'll also like paint, and so kind of combining the journaling there, which I did like 4 pages there, but I have so much to do when I'm back, and then it's like trying to find time to do it. I wish I could do more there, but yeah, I think it's just really hard to fit it all in. But I try. I always like trying, but I always go in with good intentions, and then I bring it back and it's like empty.
It's cool to kind of like relive the trip, I suppose, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that's very true. And like it's nice to be able to look back through your photos and like relive that and combine it with the ephemera and things, and yeah, it's like combining those memories. And like with Japan, it was like a year and a half ago that we went, and I'm still sort of reliving that because I'm still doing my journaling, which is nice, but I definitely need to get it done before I then go back to Japan and all the memories like merge together.
It's funny because our last guest episode, we were talking to my friend Salam, who was also documenting her Japan trip. She was sharing her journal. So, you know, you don't have to have been to Japan to be on a podcast.
No, yeah.
Other countries are available.
Yeah. But she was also like, you know, continuing to like journal. And I don't know if it's just one of those trips, because I feel like it's such a bucket list, like
Exactly.
the stationery and the art supplies and everything.
The stamps.
Oh, yeah, the Eki stamps, and yeah, on all the cute ephemera, all the packaging. Like, even just for, like, a candy bar, it's like, well, I have to keep this and put that in my journal. Like, everything's so cute. Everything's got a mascot. Yeah, I think it's just one of those trips that it feels like there's so much to document, and it just takes a long time, so it just becomes this ongoing project when you come home.
Thank you, Katie, for joining us for the Crafternoon Podcast. It's been really lovely chatting to you about your sketchbooks and all your different creative hobbies. If people want to follow your art, where can they find you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. So on Instagram, I am Katie_Moody. On YouTube, I'm just Katie Moody, and on Patreon, I'm just Katie Moody. So you can just search my name. It's very easy, and I'm basically everywhere on the internet because I spend far too much time here. You'll probably find me wherever. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been so nice just chatting. As I said, like, I can talk about this for hours, so it's been so nice to just chat with friends and just talk about something that I love.